Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I have a special guest, Leigh, with me, and we're going to talk all things alcohol today. So, I know that this is kind of a tough topic to talk about sometimes because alcohol is such a widely accepted, I guess, drug, as you want to call it, in our society, and it is literally everywhere. And you're lucky if you go to a party or dinner out with people or a girls' night or whatever, and people aren't drinking. Because in my experience, all my friends, everybody drinks. Like my friends drink, like business people drink, like everybody's drinking. And so it's kind of just like what you do or what people do when they get together. And I actually was a nightly wine drinker. So I was even doing it like not when I was going out, but like at home with my husband or at home by myself. It's sometimes just like thinking it was my reward at the end of the day, like, oh, I can finally sit down and relax and have a glass of wine. And so it's accepted. It's not, and I do think that the tides are turning a little bit. And I have seen a lot of people who are starting to drink less or really mindful of their drinking, especially people who are wanting to get on a health journey. They're like giving it up for a period of time or really trying to cut back. So I think that the tide has turned a little bit. I actually heard somewhere that millennials, which are younger than me, because I'm 47 and I'm definitely not a millennial, but are drinking less. Like there's even like these sober bars that people, not in our city, but in some of the bigger cities that people go to where they're serving like mocktails and the people there are not drinking. And some of the younger generation is actually just foregoing alcohol, which I think is amazing. So we're going to talk to Leigh a little bit about her journey with alcohol. And I think a lot of you guys will be able to relate. I know I can relate. But she's also going to give us a few tips if cutting back is something that you want to explore. I always say, like, if you're thinking about your drinking, you probably could cut back a little bit. Like if you are wondering if you're drinking too much or wondering if you should cut back or considering it, or, if it's going through your mind, you probably need to cut back. So hopefully you're watching this with an open mind. So Leigh, tell us kind of your background or your drinking history, the last few years.
Right. I think I recognize that alcohol had become an issue for me shortly after my dad passed away in 2014. I was drinking to cope with the grief. He was diagnosed with cancer on a Monday, died the following Monday. I was the only one with him when he passed away. It was unexpected. And immediately, almost, I remember turning to alcohol to help cope with that.
And everybody would probably say, of course you did. Like, of course.
Yeah. I think, for most people who have stopped drinking, there was a point in time where it shifted from what they would consider normal drinking to problem drinking. And I say a lot, I don't like to say I had a drinking problem. I had problems when I drank alcohol because I could go for days, weeks, months without it. But anytime I drank, it became an issue. Maybe not that day or that week, but eventually it led me back to the same place where, like, this is not serving me. This is not the person I want to be. This isn't how I want to feel day in, day out. And so prior to 2014, I considered myself a pretty normal drinker, meaning I would have a glass of wine a night. A bottle would last me 3 to 4 days. Fast forward to 2017, I was drinking a bottle most nights.
Yeah.
So, it really shifted in there. There was a significant turn. And in 2017, I was like, this isn't good for me. I need to stop. I'm going to take a break. So I had told myself I was going to take a 100-day break from alcohol. And I think I lasted 75 days
Still
without it.
pretty good. Yeah, not
It's
bad.
still good. I mean,
Yeah.
there was growth in that time frame. And so between 2017 and up until 2023, when I finally said, I'm done, I can't moderate, this has to be forever for me. And I accepted that it needed to be forever. I would have, you know, stints of sobriety, and then I would go back to drinking. And like I said, it would start, I'd set all these rules around it. You know, I'm going to go back to drinking, but I'm not going to day drink. I'm not going to drink when I'm out with friends at lunch. I'm not going to drink at home. You know, I'm only going to drink 2 days a week on the weekends, and I'm going to drink, you know, no more than 2 drinks and no more than 3 drinks, no more than 4 drinks. And so I always set these guardrails around my drinking, and I was able to follow them for a while.
But that's
And
6 years.
pardon, what'd you
Six
say?
6 years.
Yeah,
That's
6 years. I
yeah.
mean, it's insane, literal insanity. Like the definition of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like that's what I was doing. It was pure madness. And when I was in it, I just wanted to drink like my friends, whatever that means. You know, I have friends who I do think can take it or leave it. And then I have friends who drink as much or more than I do, you know? But it's not about what I've learned. It's not about other people. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much other people drink.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you drink. It matters how drinking makes you feel,
Yeah.
you know?
And
So,
I can remember like the 3 a.m. wake ups where you're like awake and you're sweating and your anxiety is high, and you know, and then other things that I never wanted to attribute to alcohol, like my gut would be just, you know, I'd have terrible stomach, you know, issues for days at a time. And oh, it must have been something I ate. And I never once would think it had to do with the wine, like ever. Or I'm so tired and run down. And, you know, oh, it must be because I have 4 kids. Well, it could be the wine you're having, you know, 4, 5, 6 nights a week.
right, right. And you know, I didn't want to attribute those negative impacts to wine. I didn't want that to be the thing, you know, and turns out it was my thing. When I removed that from my life, so many facets of my life improved. It had this immediate and very impactful trickle effect
Yeah.
in, you know, on my health, on my family life, on my self-confidence, my self-worth, you know, how I talk to myself, all of those things.
Yeah.
And you know, I mentioned this before we started recording, but I don't share my story to try to convince people to quit drinking. I share my story to give hope to people who want to quit and feel stuck.
Yeah.
One of my girlfriends said, I you know I follow a lot of sober influencers, and she said, I don't care about your drinking. I care if you care about your drinking.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm like, that's it. That's it, you
Yeah.
know?
It's so hard to look at. I think it's hard to look at people who have quit drinking, or, you know, a lot of the sober community online, and imagine yourself being able to do that. So I think that's so important that you and others are showing that you still can, you know, be happy and go out and be a normal person without alcohol, because I think a lot of people just don't understand how that could even happen, you know, like, and it's hard to, I think it's especially hard to say I'm like done quitting for, or I'm done drinking forever. It's hard to look that far in the future, especially if you're just kind of starting, or especially if you don't have like a rock bottom where you're like fall down drunk, embarrassing your kids, you know, whatever the situation is, in the hospital, at rehab. You know, most women that I know that are in their 40s, 50s, whatever, who decide to, you know, take a break, or who need to take a break, they're in that like gray area drinking that they say, where it's like not that you're an alcoholic where you need to go to recovery or you need to go to AA meetings. And if you do, fine, but maybe they're not quite that far down the path but they're also not, just having one glass of wine with dinner on occasion, like every month or something or whatever. Or it's not causing them any issues. So I think that because a lot of people don't think it's a problem to drink that way because everybody else is doing it, right? So I must not have a problem because all my girlfriends do the same thing. But I think deep down, you kind of know in your heart, in in your mind, if it's not serving you.
Right.
you know?
Right. In terms of like from a health perspective, like the World Health Organization has come out and said no amount of alcohol consumption is safe.
Yeah.
And my mom was recently in the hospital, and this was a really eye-opening experience for me because the doctor asked her how much she drank. And, she kind of skirted around the issue and then, came to the conclusion, I probably drink 2 bottles of wine a week. And the doctor was like, that's significant, and me, like when I, in my drinking days, like 2 bottles a week, that would be a really good week. They sit in social services to talk about her drinking problem with her
Really?
2 bottles a week. And that's really one of my first experiences with the health community, really shining a light on that's not normal from a health perspective to drink that much alcohol. And
Yeah.
I didn't talk to my doctor when I was going through all of this, like starts and stops and the insanity. And I'm like, I think I have a problem with drinking. So she's like, I can refer you to, I don't even remember the name of it, alcohol and behavioral health, I think, through my insurance. And she said, well, but can you go without drinking? I'm like, oh yeah, I just finished Whole30. I can, she said, well, if you can do 30 days without it, you're fine. Like you don't have a problem. And so I think there's this disconnect
Mm-hmm.
between what we hear in the medical community and what we see our friends doing, and then this more and more information coming out really about the negative health impacts of alcohol. And it kind of causes this cognitive dissonance where I may be drinking too much, but society tells me it's okay. So you kind of got like an angel and a devil on each shoulder, and it's kind of left to each of us to figure out for ourselves.
And then you start again trying to put those rules in place. Like I went to a breast cancer specialist because my mom had breast cancer. And actually, one of my friends had the same thing. She has like dense breasts or whatever, and had to go see the specialist. And they say the same thing. They have this like rule for if you only drink 2 drinks, once a week, then you're fine. But if you drink more than that, then you have, the risk of breast cancer. And so they're putting the rules on it. So then you're trying to put the rules on it. And, I think the rules are just hard because how many times do you break the rules? Like,
Yeah.
how many times is it hard to keep those boundaries anyways? And then it's such a mental chatter, right? It's like, I bet you're feeling so much lighter, just like the not having that mental conversation with yourself every single time. Like, am I going to drink tonight? How much am I going to drink? Like, is there wine in the house? Do I need to go get wine? Are my kids watching? It's like the amount of chatter that comes with this is like stressful just in itself.
Yeah, it makes me emotional, like hearing you say those things and remembering how difficult that was.
Yeah.
That was really hard. And I would wake up almost every day and be like, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm not drinking tonight. And then by 2 o'clock, it'd be like, oh, a glass of wine would be nice. It was always, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start Monday. I don't drink that much differently from my friends. Like always trying to talk myself in or out of drinking,
Yeah.
always. Like
And
you said.
I used to call it the wine witch, that the wine witch would like show up on my shoulder about 3 o'clock or so. And just like, oh, you can just drink tonight. You can stop tomorrow. You won't. Like tonight will be the last night. And then you can, you can take a couple days off, or like it was inevitably 3 o'clock, or,
Yeah.
sometime in the afternoon, just all of a sudden your brain starts thinking about it. And um, that sober sis, Jen, that I was talking about to you before we started, she would say she was, detoxing just to retox. Like she would drink green juice by day and wine by night. And I think there's even so many, in our society, there's like memes on social media that, and I probably in a past life shared some of these myself, like coffee until wine, it's kind of a joke, but kind of not a joke. Like that was how it went. Or, mommy needs wine, or, can't wait till that glass of wine, after the kids go to bed. But I think part of, and we can talk a little bit more about this, but part of getting to that point where you don't need it is that you really do have to see it for what it's worth, like see it for what it actually is. So you have to look at that wine or whatever alcohol it is and remember these things that we talked about, that, the increase in cancer risk, the 3 a.m. wake up. Like you have to kind of play it forward to what's going to happen if I drink this. Like, am I raising my cancer risk? And it's so hard to think about that in the moment, because again, you've got all this, like the wine witch again telling you, like, you can worry about that tomorrow. Today you're going to have a drink. But I think playing a lot of it forward, like, I don't want to be tired tomorrow. I don't want to regret. I don't want to wake up feeling guilty and shameful and upset that I did this. That, I think that is a big one too, of like continually waking up every single morning, like, why did I do that? Or right before you go to bed, like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have had that wine. Like now I know my sleep is going to be bad. Or, trying to play the negative, or, see the wine or the alcohol for the negative effects that it actually has, versus seeing it as your ticket to relaxation, your ticket to relieving stress or having fun, or even people, even liking the taste, and just realizing that, like, kind of what is a stronger pull for you, like what it's hard. It's a hard switch to make in your brain. I read the book, This Naked Mind. You've probably read it. It's like the first book that I read and opened my eyes to, okay, this is like not good for me, number one. And I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of other women who feel the same way. And I'm not crazy. Like these, this is an addictive substance. So I'm not like a bad person or unable to control my drinking. Like it's not necessarily all my fault that this is
not your fault.
That
it's
this
not,
is happening.
Yeah.
This is an addictive substance that you keep going back for more. So what happens is like, oh, I'm just going to have one glass. You can't just have one glass. Like there's not too many people who can just have one glass, because then, you want to keep those feelings going. And so then you're like pouring a little bit more and then maybe just another splash. But that's the addictiveness of the alcohol. And then day after day, it just, you continue to want it. And so it's not like orange juice. Like, are you addicted to orange juice? Not too many people are like thinking about their orange juice at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's a different substance. It's not just a sparkling water,
Yes. Going back to, I post a lot about my kids and my kids seeing my drinking and things that my kids said about me drinking. And I didn't have a rock bottom either, but I had, as I say, a lot of rocky moments that all added up to it not being worth it. I didn't want my kids to see me drunk ever again. They had witnessed that enough. And I've had people comment, like, I just don't understand why moms drink, and my first question is always, are you a mom? And, and secondly, it's that, alcohol is this trap. It's an addictive substance. Marketing tells us that wine is a way to cope with motherhood. Wine is a way to ease our grief. Wine is a way to celebrate. You know, alcohol in general. I don't know if wine's your thing, but wine was my thing. I like all of it. I mean, let's be honest, but not wine. So the fact that we get addicted or we get stuck in this cycle of drinking, it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility.
Yeah.
No one's coming to save us. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted there to be this magic fix. People all the time, like, how do I quit? I'm stuck. And I'm like, you have to want to quit more than you want to keep alcohol in your life. And so all of those starts and stops over 6 years, I wanted to cling to alcohol more than I wanted to let it go. And there wasn't a defining moment that happened. It was just like, I'm going to stop drinking this Monday, June 5th. June 4th was just a regular Sunday. I had no reason to believe this. I think it was probably my 4th try, like solid try, where I'd had, lengths of sobriety under my belt, where I'm like, I'm going to do this again. And I just decided I was done. Somewhere, in this try, it's like, I'm okay saying forever again. Like, this is so much easier. Like you said, the calm, the peace, the not doing those mental gymnastics every day is just so much less chaotic than my drinking. And because I've had so many starts and stops, my friends are like, are you drinking? Or are you not drinking? Showing up to the party. And so I've just been like, I'm done. And so they've gotten used to, do you need non-alcohol options, or are you drinking the wine? Now I just come equipped with my own, and it feels normal for me. I don't think all of my friends are comfortable drinking around me. I don't have issue with them drinking. That issue is not my issue. That issue is their issue, really, because our decision not to drink really does. It's like a mirror to people who are questioning their relationship with alcohol or how much they drink. And it is, I remember being uncomfortable when people would come over and not drink. And it's like, ooh, why are they not drinking? Are they not having fun? Can they have fun? Because I couldn't not have fun if I wasn't drinking for a really long time. Or I thought that's what I believed to be true.
Yeah.
Now I've changed my beliefs, and I've, equipped myself with so much information about alcohol. Like, I've really been able to change my beliefs, which changed my whole outlook on sobriety. And it's made it so much easier. And then also, like, releasing the shame about living this sober life. I'm going to do a reel today because yesterday was just one of those days. I'm sure you get similar themes in your DMs. It's like, oh my gosh, every woman is talking about this in my DMs. Yeah. Yesterday, everyone was talking about, how do I tell my friends, or I can't tell my husband that I'm decided to quit drinking. I'm like, why? Like, why? And I think we tie so much shame and embarrassment to not being able to drink normally. And we were not designed to control an addictive substance. And that's what we're trying to do when we try to limit our drinking or set rules around our drinking, or, drink like a normal person. It just wasn't made.
I think part of that too is like, people are scared that they can't do it. So they don't want to put it out there in the world. Like, I quit drinking because what if I can't quit drinking? Like, what if I go back, or what if I drink again? Like, I've already told people that I quit, and now here I am, drinking again. And that's even worse than just keeping it quiet and just trying to do it on my own. But I'm sure you found that, like, it's hard to do it on your own. I feel like if you have accountability, some type of community or friend or somebody else who's also not drinking, it's a lot easier than trying to just like white knuckle it yourself. Especially if like your husband drinks, or, of course, like friends, and it just, that makes it harder. But if you know other people are also not drinking, then that, helps to keep you feeling like you're not alone anyway.
For sure. And I think that's why I hang out on the, sober side of Instagram,
Yeah.
because I needed a place, like all of my friends in real life drink and pretty heavily. And I needed a place where my sobriety was not only normalized, but it was celebrated. And like there's this whole community that I had no idea existed. And I think it's relatively new. I don't think it existed back in 2017 when there was like a few voices in this space, like Holly Whitaker, Laura McCowan, who were talking about it. But that was all relatively new, unlike now where people are loud and proud and sharing their recovery stories and really, like I said, just releasing the shame and embarrassment the stigma that's been tied to sobriety.
Yeah. I think it's hard though. At first, it feels sad. It feels like
Mhm.
what did I used to say? Like wine was my BFF,
Yeah.
like, it was my friend, and it was kind of sad. I mean, that's even sad to say that, but that's kind of how you feel. It's like this thing is like, I'm going to have to give this up. Like that makes, it's such a bummer. Like, why does it have to be me who has to give it up? Everybody else gets to still enjoy it. But then it just, at some point too, it also becomes less enjoyable, I think. Like you're just, and then sometimes you're not even really looking forward to drinking. It's just like you're just drinking because it's like your habit, or it's what you do every night, or you're feeling pulled to it when you know that it's just going to make you feel like crap. So I would love to know kind of your first, let's say, few months of not drinking. What tools did you use, or what really helped you the most?
Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge what you said, because I do think there's this grieving associated with letting it go. You're letting go of this friend, you're letting go of this thing that you've depended on through thick and thin. And I remember standing in front of my refrigerator and throwing a temper tantrum because my husband had a half open bottle of wine in there and I couldn't drink it, rather than I'm choosing not to drink it, trying to shift that mindset. I remember my first vacation and locking myself in the bedroom because that's the only place I trusted myself not to drink. And it was so hard to be down with all of my friends who were drinking. So I would just retreat up to my bedroom. I'd take a shower. I'd read my book and I needed, space away from that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a toxic ex-boyfriend, I say a lot, that I just kept going back to for the longest.
Exactly. And yeah, and you're like, things never change with this. Like, why do I
Yeah.
keep coming back? It never changes. But I think you're right. You do. The first step is really that you just need some time away. And sometimes it's a lot like your fitness journey. It's like you've got to get new habits in place. You've got to get new pathways in your brain. So you have sometimes it is going to take some discipline and some
Sure.
effort at first before it becomes your new normal. Like it's going to take a little bit of willpower at first, a little bit of just staying disciplined and committing, and reminding yourself why you're doing this before it becomes second nature.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of what has been most helpful, I think the Huberman Lab, Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist out of Berkeley, I think his podcast, Alcohol and Your Health, was probably the most impactful thing to my journey. I listened to that 3 times
Yeah.
because I was overwhelmed by the information and the data that he presented, because it's science-based information. You can't argue with it. And then, I anytime there, obviously there's some haters in me sharing about my alcohol-free journey. And it's no different than, talk about toxic relationship, everything in moderation. It's no different than, moderating sugar or moderating Diet Coke. And I'm like, well, Diet Coke never made me forget tucking my kids in at night, or sugar never made, somebody kill someone in a drunk driving accident. It's like,
Yeah.
let's really see this for what it is. This is a little different than whatever, your ding dong at night, or, whatever your
Yeah. Yeah.
that thing is.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was really impactful to that science-based data. It's like you can't argue with that information.
Right.
Like you said, Annie Grace's book, This Naked Mind, I think it's called Control Alcohol. That is another one really backed in science
Mm-hmm.
that was helpful. Laura McCowan's book, We Are the Luckiest.
Yeah.
She writes, like, I'm a writer too, and her writing is like what I aspire to be. That just that raw, vulnerable sharing, but still with such empathy because we've lived through this. And whenever, women reach out to me, it's like, are you saying earlier about everything that we were going through? Like, I remember it so well. And I just want to reach out and like give people hugs, and that's how I felt,
Yeah.
reading her book. And then really this whole, like I said, this whole sober side of Instagram where there's this entire community of women, women without kids, women with kids. I'm doing a post next week about, these are the faces of moms who aren't drinking and who have these sober accounts, because I think we feel so alone in this journey because the people that surround us in our everyday life can't relate to our experience or don't want to talk about it. I mean, we'll talk about colonoscopies and we'll talk about hormone replacement therapy, but no one wants to sit and talk about the negative impacts of alcohol,
Yeah.
when you're sitting around the table at dinner drinking alcohol.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that we always think, well, she must have been, further down. She must have like really had a problem, a worse problem than me.
yep.
Or she, she doesn't, we always think that we have it different than somebody else. But you're right that there's moms and busy moms and working moms and moms of lots of kids and, empty nesters and all different, people who drink even more wine or less wine than you drink that decided to give it up.
And so many, it's like there's no face, there's no, all of these like Christian women, blessed, I look at the profiles of people that follow me and it's like no one would ever know this person was struggling with alcohol. No
Yeah.
one, alcohol does not discriminate.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to be struggling to decide that it's not serving you. Like you
Excellent point.
can, you can actually just know that it's terrible for your health and it's not helping you lose weight and it's, screwing up your sleep and whatever. And you can just decide, just like maybe you decide to be gluten-free, you can be alcohol-free. Like you can make that
Yeah.
decision tomorrow.
It's specific to what you do. Like the health journey is we could spend a whole nother half hour on just talking about, how it impacts our workouts, how it impacts, like I had this weight just like fall off, and I look at pictures from a year ago and how bloated I was from the alcohol, and my diet hasn't improved. I was a lot better about this time of the year when I found the faster way and I was doing that religiously,
Yeah.
but alcohol made a huge difference,
Yeah.
and then how we feel for our workouts and how we're able to push ourselves. And yeah, it can just be a really liberating choice to remove alcohol from your life.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to cause you problems.
But you also, a lot of people will tell me, even just, they'll say this in the fitness journey as well, but the same goes for alcohol, that you don't know how good you can feel until you feel good. Like, especially if you're drinking every other night, every night, 5 times a week, 4 times a week, you're never really getting that alcohol out of your system. So until you do, a lot of people don't realize, oh, like I can have so much more energy in my workout, or I don't wake up tired anymore. But you never realize that you actually were tired until you feel, energy and you feel in a great mood. And, you wonder like, how long are we going to go through that cloudy, living life behind that fog of what alcohol does to us. And it's just amazing how like good you actually can feel.
Yeah, this Naked Mind, I did a couple programs through them. They have like the path
Yeah.
I did that. And that was good information too. There's so many different ways to recover and so many resources out there. But they say that alcohol takes 10 days, like to actually everything leave your system and you get over the ill effects of the last time you drink. So even if you're only if drinking one night a week, you're still not experiencing ultimate health,
Yeah.
that you would if you just cut it out completely. And
Yeah.
I also do want to say that, 90% of us are not physically dependent on alcohol. There is 10% of the population who drinks that are physically dependent on alcohol, and that requires like medical intervention to do it safely. And obviously we're not doctors, but I do just want to put that out there because I think it's important to note.
Yeah. Well, this was so great. I know it's such a tough topic sometimes. And my hope, and I know your hope, is just that people will think about it. It's just that we can put this information out here and people will be aware, because we don't know what we don't know. I mean, I can honestly say that years ago, I honestly didn't know that it was I don't want to say the word dangerous, but as bad as it is for
Yeah.
you. I really truly shared and believed those headlines that said wine is good for your health. I
That was
I was
funded by alcohol industries, right?
Oh yeah, I was
Those
going with that though. I was like, I'm going with that. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going with that because that's what I'm doing. And I really didn't know. So when we know better, we can do better, I think. And the only way for people to know is, to share stuff like this. So I appreciate your page. What is the name of your page? I'll put everything we talked about in the description of this, that podcast and the books that you talked about, and also your Instagram handle. But is it Macros and Mocktails?
Yes, with an N, macros in mocktails.
Okay. Yeah. So mocktails are another thing that really can help some people. Some people like them, some people don't. But replacing that habit with something else, I find, is super helpful. So if your habit is while you're cooking dinner to always have wine, or after the kids go to bed to sit down and have wine, replace that with something else. Even if you put it in a wine glass, like have a mocktail, have sparkling water. I have my little sleepy time mocktail, which is like sparkling water with a splash of tart cherry juice, which actually helps with sleep as well. And there's tons of stuff on the market now. There didn't used to be, but there are all kinds of things, non-alcoholic beers and like drinks out there now that you can actually, like Athletic Brewing Company has one that our golf course even sells it. And I don't drink beer because I'm gluten-free, but a lot of beer drinkers even say that the non-alcoholic Athletic Brewing Company is pretty good. Guinness, I think, has one that's pretty good. I probably wouldn't drink something that heavy, but a lot, if that's your thing, I don't know about the wines. Some of the wines are okay. Groovy has a pretty decent, like champagne type one that I've had, Dry Secco, I think it's
Yeah, I
called.
have a highlight in my stories about alcohol-free wine and what to look for.
Okay.
Helpful. I do want to leave with some immediate actionable tips for people who may want to test the waters
Yeah.
in alcohol-free. And I would say to choose a date and decide, if you've never removed alcohol from your life, decide how long you want to go without drinking, whether it be a week, whether it be a month. If you've done a week before, try lengthening maybe to 10 days, maybe to 2 weeks. And then in that time frame, just consider drinking is not an option. And
Yeah.
that's what I say to myself every single day of this journey. When people are like, what do you do when it gets hard? I say, drinking is not an option. So I have to find something else to do. I have to go for a walk. I can take a bath. I can eat a whole cake if I want to. I can go to a movie with my kids or by myself. I can go to bed at 8 o'clock, just to try to escape the noise in my head. And I did a lot of those things early on. It's like, you can do anything but drink.
Yeah.
And so develop that mindset. And then, like you said, if you're usually drinking when you cook, replace it with something, whether it be club soda, whether it be a non-alcoholic option, something that you look forward to that's still a glass in your hand. And so you're still doing the same routine. It's just different. And if the noise is too loud, get outside I think that's super helpful in taking a walk, get outside and see nature. And so just, and believe you can do this, like believe in the possibility of removing alcohol from your life. And it, like you said, don't think about forever. I would have never made it had I thought about forever in the beginning. It's one day at a time. I'm not going to drink today. And then I
Yeah.
wake up the next day and I say the same thing. I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So all of these things, all of these coping mechanisms that are like security blankets in early sobriety, at 9 months sober, and granted I had, a period of 7 months and a period of 4 months, so it's not my first rodeo, but all of those things I've been able to let go of. And there will still, like, I'll still be somewhere where there's association with wine. If I go to a pub and I'm hungry and, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, which are all triggers for drinking. If I'm hungry, if I'm tired and I go to a pub, I'm like, oh God, a glass of wine sounds so good right now. And so it's like, I know I need to drink water. I know I need to, eat my food, and then it goes away. It's not like these,
Just like 20 minutes usually, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
at the most,
Yeah.
it feels like forever in the moment.
Right.
But then ride the wave. Like
Yeah.
I can do this. And then it's like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And then you have this amazing sense of like pride that, oh, I did
I
that,
did that.
you create new neural pathways, and there's so much amazing science behind all of it. I could talk about this forever, but
Yeah. And you're
I
like thankful that you didn't. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I didn't open that bottle.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
But I've never regretted not
Not
drinking.
drinking. Yeah. I know, especially the next morning. Oh my gosh. Well, this was so great. I know that at least if people can take one little thing away from this, you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to, you don't have to quit forever, but I always say give yourself 21 days and just see how you feel. Just see how you feel. If you like, you can always go back to drinking, like if you really want to. So don't think that it's like, just because you're trying without, it's always going to be there. Like that's another thing I would tell myself. Like if, you're having that craving or you're really wanting it one day, just tell yourself like, it's not going anywhere. It's always going to be there. So if I decide I want it later, then I'll have it. But for right now, I'm not. So, it's
Yeah,
hard.
so I can always drink. I simply am choosing not to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my DMs are always open. So if people, see this and want support or want to reach out or have questions, like just you can reach me via Instagram and I will always respond.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'll put all that information in the description of this YouTube so that you guys can find it, or you can reach out to either of us if you can't. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for listening.